Welcome to the July 11th edition of the PFF Forecast. This is part two of the conversation that we had with Nate Tice. An awesome conversation. It was so good that we decided to cut it up into two parts because he was with us for like 90 minutes and it just made too much sense. So we hit his quarterback tiers and Eric and I did our quarterback tiers in the first episode with Nate. We went through tiers 1 through 3. This starts off with tiers 4 and 5. Honestly, maybe the most interesting part of the quarterback conversation, because there's quarterbacks in here that teams think they're competing for Super Bowls with. There are young guns that are they going to get extensions? Guys like Kyler Murray, should he be thought of as on the precipice of elite? Where are we at with these guys? And Nate breaks down quarterbacks just about as well as anybody out there because, well, he is a quarterback. He's also the son of Mike Tice. And in this part of the conversation, we get to the Mike Tice stories, which are phenomenal. We also have Russell Wilson stories because Nate backed up Russ at Wisconsin, and we closed it out with some recommendations. So it is a fantastic closeout to an awesome conversation with Nate Tice. If you didn't listen to part one, that of course has tiers 1 through 3 of our quarterback tiers. Go check it out. Plus a bunch of offensive conversation. We talked about the Rams, talked about the Niners, his top offensive play callers. So if you didn't listen to that, go check it out. But this is part 2 with Nate Tice. Let's rock. Before we get to Nate, something pretty important I got to tell you guys about because fantasy football season, it's here. If you didn't think it was here yet, maybe just go check out Twitter or text your friends, or I guarantee you they're thinking about it. And we've got you guys covered because we are giving you an opportunity to get a PFF subscription for 40% off. Any subscription you want, promo code is SAVE40, SAVE 40, and you can get any PFF subscription for 40% off. That means the following can be yours for just $5.99 with a PFF Edge subscription on the monthly option. $5.99. You can get the Fantasy Football Draft Guide, complete with all player rankings and projections from all of our awesome analysts, Ian Hartitz, Kevin Cole, Nathan Yankee, who was 3rd in Fantasy Pros rankings and 11th out of 186 in draft rankings last year. The College Football Preview magazine and the first edition of the 2022 NFL Draft Guide. That's right, it's 2021. Our NFL Draft Guide is already out, plus all of PFF's locked article content for $5.99 a month with promo code SAVE40. I can't tell you what a good deal that is. I might go buy one myself just to make sure that I take advantage of the deal. Now I'm being really corny, but you get the idea. Go check it out, pff.com, SAVE40. And go to symbol.app/PFF, use promo code PFF. And if you deposit $10, you can get a free year of PFF Edge by depositing $10. It's basically a stock market for sports. It's awesome. It's a ton of fun. You earn cash with the wins that your teams accrue. Plus you can buy and sell their stocks. So go to symbol.app/PFF and use promo code PFF at Symbol, SAMBULL, and take advantage of that fun platform. Plus get a free PFF Edge annual subscription. And now it is time for part 2 with Nate Tice. My next tier is my big one, where I go Tannehill, Baker, Cousins, who I feel like are all like weirdly Spider-Mans pointing at each other.
You are, man. It's so
like,
funny.
Give me a great coach. Let's run bootleg play action. I'll throw it downfield. Like,
I spent time watching these guys going like, all right, get a definitive answer, Nate. Let's watch them, and you're ranking them. And I watch them. I'm like, they're all the same to me. They all have this 1-2 glaring negatives that they have, and they just can't. And they're hit an age where it's like, okay, they are what they are. And then, but they do enough good stuff. You're like, you can't quit them completely. Yep. Oh yeah, I'm sure Eric knows, being a cousin or a Vikings fan, watching Cousins a little bit.
It's kind of maddening. So I have those 3 guys, and then I have Stafford, and I like go back and forth like on Stafford because I do think there is a chance. We have like he's been mired down, but he has had good weapons in Detroit. So I'm not one of those guys that thinks like all of a sudden he's getting this. It's not like going from Goff Fisher to Goff with McVay. Like, I think some people are prescribing. And then I continue to go kind of down the list. So then I have Derek Carr. Then I have Matt Ryan. I do think there's some data out there that says Matt Ryan's arm is not, as great as, we'd want it to be. And I include the young guys in this tier who I think on any given game, when I see Kyler Murray versus Ryan Tannehill, like, yeah, there's a little bit of an edge to Ryan Tannehill, but it's not enough for me to go there in a different tier. So I go Kyler Murray, and then I'm going to tag on to the end of that the Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert group, because I think both those guys are right there. It's really close. So I have that next tier is really big for me. And that's where I think you go from I have hope to the next tier where it's like, I'm going to start reading some draft guide stuff in October.
Yeah, I think every single smart football person we've had on here, including Nate, likes Stafford. That's the one thing that I hate about my Stafford opinion, which is like, look, because on one hand, that he's taken the dog ass Detroit Lions to like 3 winning seasons, et cetera, et cetera. But like, he also gets a lot of offensive coordinators fired. And it's like, how do you deal with that? But
I know
and
I've never been like a guy that's been like, oh, I'm Stafford all the way either. It's just one of you can't quit him because he's just like, he does those, like, it's hard. It's hard because he has those series. He'll have a whole half where it's like, this guy might be a top 3 quarterback, like right now. And then he'll look like you want to bench him. Like you're, and
he shapes up. Like when they fired Mike Lombardi and then went to Jim Bob Cooter, he's like, all right, it's time to play well again. And then he does for like half a year, and then they go to hell. And then he gets beveled. He's like, all right, time to be the CPOE king for a half a year. And then and it's like, can he just do it once? Can he put it together once? And this is, to me, like, this is the definitive thing. Like, we're going to know, and we're going to know quickly with him. I think my tier 4, these are guys that can be playoff quarterbacks. I don't think they can win. I also think they can be complete. They can asymptote to 0 so quickly. It's crazy. I have Winston, Fitzpatrick, Goff, Wentz, Newton, Roethlisberger. And here's somebody who's at the top of the tier, but after listening to Nate, I might want to put him higher. I just don't think he hits enough doubles, is Kyler Murray. Like, I don't think Murray, and maybe it's a product of the offense. I just think if Murray peppered the 10 to 19 area, like, he'd be an elite quarterback. It's just like, I see too much of the short stuff. I see him being very good on the deep stuff. He needs to hit doubles, and I don't see it yet.
I'm with you on that because, and I'm going to knock Cliff for it. I think it's a scheme issue as opposed to it's a can or won't issue. It's that he's not, it's not that he won't be able to do it. It's just that they don't ask him to do it too much. They just ran. When they started last year and they had DeAndre Hopkins there, and what they were doing, all the stuff, they just iso ball DeAndre. Hey, you run your 1-man route, and then the other 3, we're going to run some combos. And it was like, it looked good. It was like, okay, all right. And I was like, all right, maybe Cliff's got it. He's honing in on what he runs in the NFL. The problem was Cliff never changed it the rest of the year. He just ran the same stuff. And the problem with that, it was a lot of quick game, or it was a shot play, where it was a big post and over. Not just the Rams Titans ones where it's more of that intermediate range. It's the big ones, the big cross country routes. And I think that's where it's more like maybe he just wasn't. They never ran it. And that's I want to see it. So I'm with you. I agree with that negative. I want to see him hit some more doubles as well. I do think when he has been asked to do it, he can do it. It's once a game, or 3 times a game, as opposed to maybe, I'm picturing in my head seam balls or basic digs, just like that kind of hitting that range. I think he can do it. Like, that was a negative with Russ for a while. It's still a little bit. That 0 to 6 yard range, that's where the height comes in. It's not getting the balls batted down. It's because at quarterback position, you really have to anticipate so much, and not just anticipate throwing it out there, but like, you're picturing, you're not going, or like you're really closing your eyes a little bit, not literally, but in your brain. I don't see exactly what's going on, but I assume this is going on. And when you're me at 6'5", sometimes I had to do that. I can only imagine being 5'11" or 5'10" and Kyler say and having to do that. So that's what I'm curious as to see Eric, is that, or maybe I'm wrong and maybe he can't do it. Maybe that's where Cliff was going, like, I don't want to run it because he can't throw those. So that's like another thing you have to figure out sometimes.
Yeah, there was a great part in Mike Holmgren's A Football Life where Steve Young said, Mike Holmgren taught me how to throw things I wasn't seeing. And he said, I was early in his career, he had to see the receiver open to throw it. And the good coach makes you so confident in the scheme that you'll throw it without having to see it. And I think that's that's a really good way to put it, because even at 6 foot, whatever Young was, he had to learn how to do it. And I think for shorter quarterbacks, it's certainly like a feel thing. You wonder with Wilson, with the new OC, Kyler, like hearing folks a little bit dowdy on Cliff, like, does that ever happen?
Yeah, well, and that's well, another thing too is like what you're saying with the anticipation and all that, and just like picturing those types of things is like when you're throwing it, when you throw it, you're that's why man coverage sometimes is easier to beat, because all right, I know this guy's guarding my slot with outside leverage. Okay, I'm running this route, I could beat it. That's why maybe sometimes Russell struggles against, too high coverages, where it's like, hey, I don't know how these guys are passing things off. So I think that's where some of that comes in too, is that it's, if you run man against them, okay, I know this guy's getting covered in man, I just got to throw it to this spot. But as opposed to zone, it's like, well, I don't know if that will is going to fall off. I don't know if that safety is going to drive down. Like, and I think sometimes where these guys in that intermediate range that don't have full faith, like you said, where Steve Young is like, you have to throw to a spot. If you throw a seam ball, there are so many arms in the way and you're like, and that's why some guys that could just rip it. It's like, holy crap. Like that's an underappreciated throw. Those little 16 to 20 yard seam balls. Cause it's just like, you have to anticipate, you have to throw it on the line, but also anticipate it. And then also you have to assume that no one's going to fuck up your throw. And you really hope that doesn't happen.
No, it's fast. We've talked about this with Kyler. I mean, the intermediate range, the place I always think of, like Brady and Rodgers, like own this area. Drew Brees always owned it. That 10 to 19 range, 72 passer rating last year. I mean, like abysmally below, average. And it speaks to everything that you're saying, where it's like 20 plus. Yeah. When I just like launch, just like drop back and let it go. Like his accuracy is awesome. He's not inaccurate. And it'll be really fascinating to see, whether that actually materializes. I was going to ask you this, like, so it really seems that the scheme is so important from I have to trust it perspective, especially in that intermediate area. Getting back to Stafford and McVay, like, is that where not take the next step, but like, is that where like the Stafford like MVP thing comes from, where it's like, okay, he's never had an offensive coordinator. He's always been the smartest guy in the room or whatever, like, has he ever had someone that allows him to trust it that way? Is that kind of what you're seeing?
I think it's more that he's actually willing to push it, where Goff was going like, so on those types of concepts that the Rams love, the post is usually an alert. It's not number one on your read. When you get it on the drawing on it, it'll say alert, and then the over will have the number one. So technically that's the first read, and you alert the over because you're like, or alert the post because you're like, I like that, or I like Brandon Cooks, or I like, Deshaun Jackson on this deep post. I guess there might be quarters, and I just see something, and it goes 1 to 2. I think the frustration that McVay had was Goff just never alerted the alert. It was just always, I'm going to 1 to 2 to check down, 1 to 2 to check down. And you weren't getting any of that explosiveness that, like in the 2018 offense. Like I rewatched that Chiefs game and one other game the other day, and like you forget all those gashes to Brandon Cooks, all those like benders and the glance routes and the posts and coming on the over because they were hitting that. Now Robert Woods is catching the 20-yard over because that takes the top off the defense. That's where literally the top's coming off now because the post is getting hit, everything opens up. So I think with Stafford, where the excitement comes from is he can make those intermediate throws that Goff can make. He can do them just as well. He can drop back and throw a stick. He can do all the basic stuff that McVay does. He's now going to crank it up to 11. I think where Goff stayed at 7 or 8, he'd stay in third gear a little bit, maybe go to fourth gear, but he never push it to fifth gear in that offense. He just doesn't have that in him. I think now Stafford's going to let it rip, for better, for worse. And I think that's maybe, and also have a run game around him. I mean, Stafford, how many years he had like 40 games where they didn't have a 100-yard rusher. I know that's not everything, but like the fact that they had no run game whatsoever, now going to an offense that's more or less based around that and all the passes off of that, I think that's where some of the optimism comes with Stafford. It's like, okay, he can make those other throws, but now he's going to throw it deep 5-6 times as opposed to once that Goff would do it. And Goff would throw some of those with like his eyes closed. Like he would just throw it in double coverage. Like hopefully he goes make a play. Stafford actually has that arm strength to kind of go like wait on it and see a good look and then let it rip. So I think that's where some of the, MVP hype is coming from us with that, which is funny because that's a spoiler for later.
I'm excited. We're going to get into, I have one last offensive question. We're going to get into some of the bets at the Stafford MVP stuff.
My tier 4.
Did Nate do his 4th tier?
Yeah. I'll rattle it off because you guys nailed some points, but tier 4, I got that little trio that you guys or quadrant, I should say. Tannehill, Carr, Cousins, Baker. And then I go Burrow, and then I went Trevor Lawrence, and then I put Cam Newton at the end of my tier 4.
Oh, interesting.
Yep. And I think I think Trevor Lawrence truly is a generational guy, so I'm very excited to see him.
Well, you guys are both tall, so you are bound by that. Yeah,
long arms. Yeah, it's a 6'4" club. Actually, he's even taller than me. But like you guys have pointed out, Tannehill, Carr, Cousins, Baker. It's kind of that. You're kind of saying the same thing with all of them. It's the Spider-Man meme. I put Tannehill at 1. Yeah, he's not going to be the guy that gets you a bucket. I just like standing tall in the pocket and delivering. I'm a sucker for that old school quarterback type. He's a good enough athlete where he can scramble, but he's not going to be juking guys. But I do appreciate that with him. Derek had a better year than I think even some people realized last year. That Raiders, Gruden has his negatives, but he can put together an offense. It's fun to watch. It really is. Derek just, he still has the same negatives. He's not going to push it deep. He's not always going to scramble. Like he just doesn't like to tuck and run. It's just not his game. But I think that's what he is, but he's still in this kind of tier 4. Cousins, kind of the same thing. Has those blow up moments. Cousins is Cousins. We'll have moments of brilliance where you're just like, holy crap, this guy's amazing. But then he'll have 2 games where it's like, he's not completing anything. Burrow, Baker. I've hedged a little bit on Baker a little bit. I think some of his actually. So the joke I've made before is Baker is Russell without the athleticism. I think he has some of the negatives that Russell has, where he's number 1 read and then scrambles, and he always boots to his right, always scrambles to his right. It's like the quarterback in what was that show on Playmakers on ESPN?
Oh yeah,
what
a great show, an incredible show.
Baker's like that. He bats the ball twice when he's scrambling. Bats it once when he's throwing. Same thing. But I think that's
Emmanuel Lacho was thinking about the running back who was coked out.
That's right.
And wondering where the line was.
That's right. What a show. What a show.
What an incredible combination of 20 years ago and right now.
Right now. We tied it. That was with
Where's the line? I don't know.
Yeah.
Double on
the javelin coming in from the guy smoking weed outside of the stadium.
That was oh my God. We need a whole nother podcast on that whole thing. That was that was such entertainment for the weekend. But back to those guys. Oh, and then Burrow, talk about another Chad Pennington comparison. Is my comparison for Burrow was I called him Dak Pennington because he's big and athletic like Dak, but then he has arm and accuracy like Chad Pennington. And I like Burrow, but I just think his upside is limited as far as being that elite tier. Like we've talked about that tier 1, tier 2. But I think there's going to be a lot of years where Burrow's in that tier 3, where he is just, he's that good quarterback, but he needs a little bit of help around him. But he's a good because he can do enough. Trevor Lawrence, I already talked about. And then I'm not as down on Cam as some people are. I think they had crap around him last year. And I think that thing was like gum and shoestring, just trying to get to 20 points for that team.
The crap was so bad around him that people thought Tom Brady was washed. And then Tom Brady turned into Superman when he went somewhere with decent weather and good weapons.
Oh yeah. Where he doesn't have to worry about weather and all of a sudden he's like, he can just chuck it and not get yelled at if he does the stuff. But no, it's dead serious going from the N'Keal Harry to, all of a sudden I got 2 legitimate all-pro receivers, and Antonio Brown is my 3, and it's like all 3 of their tight ends are like legitimate number 1 tight ends. It's it's in a good old line. Yeah, that helps a lot.
So you think, because the interesting thing about Cam is it always feels, and I'm deferring to you obviously on this, but it always feels like the mechanics just it starts. I don't know what the best. I'm searching for an analogy here. It's like someone that just gets off to a really nice start in something, and you just know 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes in, whenever it is, that point. It's like the guy who can drink 8 beers, but the 9th beer, it's like fuck, this shit's going.
His seasons are 400-meter dashes. He's laboring at the end.
Yeah, it's like what happened? All of a sudden, it's like I'm off the back foot. I'm uncorking. I've got broken fibula, all this stuff. It's weird.
When he has long arms, but he also has, and I actually can relate to this a little bit. And so a friend pointed this out to me, and now I can't unsee it. He has long forearms. And I think some of that the long release comes from that. And I never noticed it until someone pointed it out. And it was just like, oh my God, you're right. Kellen Mond has a similar thing where he has, that's why I noticed it. And then it went from there. And another quarterback that had it was Achilles Smith. I'm not saying Kellen Mond's Achilles Smith, but same type of thing. But with Cam, it's just that long release. And he had the arm strength to always overcome it. So I think what happens with sometimes a lot of coaches is go, all right, you're getting it done. Like, I'm not going to tweak anything. Even though I always thought he sailed balls. His mechanics are, once you hit 22, 24, like your mechanics are your mechanics. You can improve your footwork a little bit, and you can improve your mental processing to get the ball out quicker, which is, I think, everyone wants to talk about Josh Allen and changing his arm slot and everything. I think it's just because the game got slower for him mentally.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden now he can anticipate throws as opposed to being late and just rocketing it in there. That's why it looks so much better, because he's calm as opposed to going like, oh shit, I got to get that in there. And I think with Cam is permanently on that oh shit. Like, he knows, but he locks in his receiver. He has such a strong arm that he waits an extra half second. It was like Byron Leftwich. Remember Byron throwing? He had that long release too. His was even more crazy, but it was just like that. And it's just like he's gotten away with it for so long, and it comes unraveled because he starts getting banged up. He starts taking hits. When you have a long release like that, you're going to take a lot more hits, and that's all fine and good when you're 24. But I think now it's when he gets maybe rocked. It's like, I'm not bouncing up from that as quick as I was 5 years ago. And I think those just start to add up. I think it's just the human element.
It was sort of like with Leftwich had such a long, but he didn't have the athleticism, right? Like it was why like RG3 could do so well in year one, because linebackers are so scared shitless that like they don't move on. They're so slow that your arm delivery doesn't matter. I think with Cam's running ability, that did it for a long time.
They have the get out jail free card.
Yeah.
If you have legs, that's what that does. You could have the best defense dialed up, best pressure, and a quarterback could just scramble for a first down.
Yeah.
Like, that is what that does. And that's why, not just in fantasy, but in real life, like, why that helps. I think more of these quarterbacks coming through, even the Justin Herbert of the world are they're so big and athletic. It's become insane how big and athletic these guys
and the
are.
Floor,
it's a prerequisite.
The floor for like their ability to throw is like past where the roof was before with athletic quarterbacks. I feel like, it's like everyone kind of has, there's all this arm talent out there. Offenses are better schemed as well, like with the passing game in mind. So I think all those things play into it. Eric, do you still have a tier to go? I've completely lost track.
I'm all done. We're all done. I think we're good with tiers.
We can close the book on the tiers.
We can get the fun stories and the questions.
The tiers, RTIE, RS are done. And now it's time for the people's tiers to then flow based on whichever quarterback we hated the most. So we are going to do a couple of things quickly. We are a betting podcast, and Nate, you're in Las Vegas. And so we have to talk about this. I've been very excited. Give us some of the things that you have bet on, futures, even if it's something that you haven't bet on yet, but you're like, hey, this is kind of a thesis I have. I want to hear it.
Okay, so one, I'll go knock out a couple that I have bet on already. One is Patriots to win the AFC East at plus 350. I think the defense is going to kick back. I think last year was just, I think Belichick just kind of redshirted last year with everybody. The O-line is legitimately very good. They, in the sense, they have no real weaknesses. They might not have a lot of stars, but it's more every player's good, which is you don't really get that much in these days. I think Cam, like I said, is a little better than people gave him credit for. I'm a big fan of Kedrick Bourne, the receiver they signed, Nelson Aguilar. I know that it's kind of a weird signings, like, in the sense how they pay and everything, but I do like the synergy that they're going to bring. I'm going to use a nice little corporate buzzword there. And then also, I like that. And then also, the tight ends, the Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry. And I can kind of picture what they're trying to do now. And I like it. And also just getting value here, plus 350. They can get the Patriots at that. I think the Bills might get a little bit of regression. I think they got a little lucky sometimes with some of the offensive stuff they did last year. I think the Dolphins, I don't think Tua we didn't even mention Tua yet in
Yeah.
this podcast, which is saying something. So, you know, we did that whole tiers. We knocked out 15 to 20 quarterbacks and none of us mentioned Tua. So that kind of tells you my feelings on the Dolphins as well. So I just think I like the value. Patriots at plus 350. I also have the Rams AFC or MC West at plus 190. That is just, it's a pick 'em really. I think the MC West is going to be a bloodbath. It's going to be so much fun to watch. That was just more, hey, this is, you know, it's better than even money. I put a little taste on that. I have Kwity Paye at defensive rookie of the year at 10-1.
Ooh.
I think he got kind of stuck in Michigan in a read and react scheme where he's going to benefit from just pinning his ears back and going. And I think he maybe surprised some people with some sacks. That's more, you know, a little value pick there as well. I think he was maybe about the 4th or 5th favorite. What else do I have? I have Calvin Ridley to lead in receiving yards at plus 1,000. I think Calvin is an elite receiver. Studying him back and going through some of these guys I watched this offseason, he's incredible. He's a really, really good player. I think just the situation they have in Atlanta where they might be a little leaky on defense. Weird. How many years have we said that now?
Yeah.
So I think in being in that Arthur Smith offense, there's going to be a lot of explosive play generated. I think it's going to be a nice fit there where you can, you know, maybe get one there. Well, we can keep going here. We got,
while you're picking out the next ones, I was going to say, you know, the Tua thing is so interesting because you mentioned Cam in that tier, not talking about Tua and going, yeah, like the quarterback matters like a hell of a lot, you know? And if there is a little bit of regression from the Bills standpoint, maybe we've been thinking about the Dolphins, Brian Flores and all. They've put together a receiving core.
And I love Flores. I think Flores is a great coach, by the way. Sorry
but he can't drop back and play quarterback, you know, and ultimately, you know, I do think that's really fascinating. And then I'm sure Eric was going to mention this, but like the Calvin Ridley one, like, you know, is he still first in receiving yards in our projections, Eric? Like that just feels
that's a good bet.
Incredible value.
Yeah, I know. I was pretty excited to see that at 10-1. You know, that one I had a little taste on. I especially with Tua, I originally he had his breakout game against Arizona, and I was like, okay, I was a little lower on him coming out, and I was before I kind of had any platform. It was just me tweeting to 2,000 people, so it was, you know, no one even heard, it was not too much when I was talking about it, but it's kind of like I feel like his upside's Alex Smith, and it's like that's it. He's a lefty Alex Smith, and I have to see more because we're talking about the can't and won't thing. He was such a fast processor, and I was just always like, is that good or bad? Is that a good part of the system or is that a bug? You know, is that a feature or a bug? And so I have to see him this next year before all of us do, but it's like, man, you know, it's got a little worrisome, like how quick he was to that. And the fact that they just went, nope, we're putting Fitzpatrick in. Like the fact they did that was like, it's a little scary. You know, it's a little worrisome. You guys just read in between the lines. I also have Dak to lead in passing yards at plus 500. Just same thing. Talking about Calvin a little bit. He was on pace to. I mean, I know that's just what the situation. Yeah, the game scripts they were in last year, but I think same kind of things. I think the defense will be a little leaky. I think that offense could be so explosive. So that was another one. I also have Dak MVP at plus 1,700. Just narrative thing. MVP votes. I think you just have to take a shot and just hope it's some narrative guy. That's why I have Stafford at plus 1,600 as well. Same thing. Not that I think they're going to be that true MVP quarterback. Maybe Dak is a little bit because Mahomes should be getting it every year. But it's like, I think just narrative wise, I could see that kind of building a little bit. Cowboys have a big year. You have the Cowboys, you get the Dallas pump a little bit. Stafford, we've talked about, I mean, you guys have mentioned it, the narrative that's already swelled this offseason. Now imagine a full season if the Rams storm the NFL a little bit. You just never know with those guys. Then rookie of the year, I have Trey Lance, offensive rookie year, plus 600. Ooh. I think a quarterback in a Shanahan offense, you're going to always just have to maybe take a peek at. And also just, again, trying to give value a little bit.
Does that one feel, so by the way, I was going to say, like, it's funny, the narratives with Dak and Stafford. So one of my favorite bets is Brady plus 1,600 to win MVP.
That's great.
And like, he was so good since the bye, you know, like, and all those guys are coming back, and no one's really talking about him in that respect. But when you're getting all this hype pre-season, like, it's easy to fall short of those, as opposed to like over, just like over the top deliver, and I worry about that with the Rams. Like everyone thinks they're going to be a Super Bowl contender. It's like, well, okay, but if like one injury happens, they're such a thin team, what happens there. And with the Cowboys, what's so fascinating to me is the way the media treats them. Like, I think that Dak has a great head on his shoulders, but get up leads with what he ate for breakfast every morning. It's like insane. And like, that just makes it harder. For him, I was going to ask you about the Trey Lance thing with Shanahan. When I was listening to your podcast about defensive schemes and talking about like, okay, everyone's trying to stop the Shanahan offense. And to me, the Trey Lance pick solidified the fact that Shanahan is like, I got to do something more. Yep. I can't just keep like running this same thing back, even if I have really creative motions and this run scheme and like all this stuff. It's like, I got to have another X factor that I can bring into it. And I'm curious what you think that looks like.
Absolutely. I think the last couple of years, he was like, all right, I have this quarterback that, he's efficient. He's accurate. He's doing what I want him to do. He doesn't push the ball down the field and he doesn't create. So what did he do? He went and got a quarterback that could push it down the field and could create and it could stand strong in the pocket. It's been a knock on Jimmy G since he came out of college. Like even when he was at Eastern Illinois, is that he doesn't have presence in the pocket. Like his eyes come down. And I don't ever want to call a guy soft because he's not soft. It's just that some guys do. Some guys go to one read and they feel the pressure, they curl up and they take the hit. Some guys are just like that. Some guys are willing to stand there, boom, take it full blast. I'm not recommending that for anybody, but I think that's what Kyle was just kind of like, hey, I like what this guy can do. Trey Lance was one of the most surprisingly fun watches in the sense that I thought he'd just be a big athlete. I actually compared him to Donovan McNabb, not just because he wore number 5 and wore green and yellow or wore green, but it's his over the top delivery, how big he is. But I didn't realize how cerebral he was going to be. And that was something that shocked me when I watched him. I saw him pointing out protections and pointing out blitzes and sliding stuff. And then it came out where coaches confirmed that and said, that's what we do with him. Mm-hmm. And I think Kyle met the kid and was just like, I like that. Like this guy knows football. And going with, and we touched on it before, the kind of wishbone-y offense that Shanahan's kind of leaned into this last year and a half. I think he's going for more guys that can just do a little bit of everything. The Deebo Samuels, the Ayuks, the juice checks, even Kittle a little bit, in the sense where I can line up. I have my 5 skill guys on every snap. I can line them up everywhere. But now I have that plus a quarterback that can run. So every snap of the ball, the defense has to go, well, we have to guard all 6 guys. Like it's like a true, almost like motion offense in basketball. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really what I think he just was like, he tweaked it a little bit last year. He was like, this is kind of, I don't think he openly said this, but he's like, this is kind of a wasted year. And I think all of a sudden he just went, okay, now I'm leaning all the way into it. And I think once he gets Lance in there and they're running almost these triple option-y kind of things, or not true triple option, but more jet sweep with zone coming back and counter coming back. I think it's gonna be really cool stuff to watch.
No, I'm excited. I am curious. What if you had to pick a week where Trey Lance finally starts, what would it be?
I think week 1. I think he goes right into it. I think by the end of camp, I think that's what happens. I think it's like week 1 of camp, no, and then they get into the week 3 preseason game and they announce it. Like I could see that, picture that happening.
That's one of the reasons why I like Trey Sermon for the same award, because I think if Lance only starts like 10, 11 games, he could very well win it. But I think Sermon has the potential to succeed in that offense in much the same way that you're talking about. And that I think that's a good shot. If he plays all 17 games, I mean, of the quarterbacks, he's the front runner. I don't think there's any doubt about it.
Yeah, I agree. That's the thing, is I just don't think the Jags will be good enough. Lawrence might have a kind of one of those 24 touchdown, 12 interception year, 14 interception year, kind of like a skewy stat line year where he's kind of gauging the NFL. And I could just see Trey Lance being on a winning team and getting that kind of that
easiest schedule in the NFL. The Niners, one of the easiest schedules in the NFL. So.
And you can just see it happening. And there's gonna be eyes on them. I mean, it's the 49ers. Like, so it's just, you got putting those puzzle pieces together.
Yeah, they have 5. They have the maximum number of primetime games, which is shocking.
They also brought back the 94 Super Bowl Reds.
Jersey. Yeah, you can't. Hey,
look, can we not get me too excited for the year? Like, it's just gonna crash and burn, and I just would like to live in bliss for another, few months or so.
You're gonna love my next bet. Then it's Nick Bosa, Defensive Player of the Year. 11.
I like that.
I think talk about narrative. I think people have forgotten about Nick Bosa for whatever reason. He's still a freak, and it was an early injury, which always helps. So I think he can play the whole 17 games and come back rip roaring. And like you said, 5 national TV games, like that stuff does matter. It does, like, because people just tout that. I mean, I'm talking about the Chiefs-Rams game from 2 years ago because it's Nike. I mean, yeah, it mattered because those are 2 awesome offenses and stuff, but it's like those matter when you watch those Nike.
If he gets like a 3-sack game and a primetime game, like, or especially one of the early ones, he's like the favorite right away. Like,
yep. He just needs one more in week like 15, and then it's like, okay, that's it.
No one knows what's happening on the defensive side of the ball, like elsewhere in the league too. It's hilarious. Like Aaron Donald was literally eating people for lunch for like 4 years, and no one knew who he was. I remember like one year I was like, is the best defensive player a guy on a 4-12 team who plays defensive tackle? It's like, yeah, he is. No one's seen him play football before.
Yeah, no, I know. Isn't it funny how that works though? It's like certain positions, it's like, no, this guy's really good. And they're like, I don't know. And that's actually, if you wanted to like take a real shot in the dark or take a home run swing at defensive player of the year, I would say Brian Burns, who was like,
heard that. I love that.
Like, I think the one I saw, he was 42 or 45 to 1, somewhere around there. But that's about the range they're getting.
You're the second person to come on the podcast and say that. Yeah, that's very good.
Another guy though, that's like, even I was a fan and like rewatching him, I'm like, this guy's incredible. And I think it's a year. There's that year delay. It's like people in the know it, then other people know it, and then everybody else knows it about a year after everybody else. Like that's kind of the catch up. So it might be next year, Brian Burns might be the bad, but I think this year you might have that kind of upper tier play. And then I have 2 win total bets. I have Jets over 6.5 wins. I like what they're doing on offense. I think Joe Douglas has done some nice things. I really do. I'm a bigger fan of Salah after this past season than the Super Bowl season. I mentioned this on the podcast. I thought the Super Bowl year, I was like, oh, that's easy. Just get an awesome D line and wreck shit. Like that's easy. Just run single high behind it. This past year when he had some injuries, he tweaked how the defense played. And I was like, okay, this guy can coach. And I know the energy. I know that all the players love him, but that only goes so far. But the fact that he can back it up, some scheme stuff, I was like, I like you a little more than I did. And I like what they're doing, some of the offensive pieces. And I just like it. Yeah, I really do. And then the other one is under 6.5 wins for the Eagles at plus 120. And I think Eagles are a little rough on the roster.
The Eagles might have the number 1 overall pick this year. Let's just say it. Let's just say it.
We did our show. We did another one of like our draft shows, I guess. And it was like kind of like who has the worst roster, and Texans were kind of like, the easy one. But then it was like non-Texans category, and the Eagles was like my easy. Everyone over, all their best players are over 30 and like broken down. And they missed out about 4 or 5 draft classes of like any players that matters. I mean, it does. I'm a huge fan of Devontae Smith. I really am. I think he was my number 1 receiver coming in this draft, but it's like, that's a receiver. It's not a quarterback, that you're really excited about the rookie being a rookie.
Yeah. They're going to have the Oklahoma quarterback room in a year. They're going to get Rattler and Hurts. They can find. I really like, so that this will be a nice way to close our betting portion here. Is I really like Sirianni to be first coach fired, and it aligns up with this, which is like he can't have been your first, second, or third choice. There's just no fucking way, and they're going to be bad. And it's like, why not get ahead of like sending great things to other coaches that we want to hire as houses. Let's just get on, let's like start shipping out gold
recruit early.
Yeah. Like let's go out to Oklahoma. Let's like send everyone to Oklahoma. Let's buy some houses around, the Oklahoma campus, and let's just shovel in gold coins and Bitcoins, whatever it takes, to get to get them over there.
We're just like going over these campuses and throwing Bitcoin wallets at campus.
Well, now that the NIL is passed, like you can do anything on a campus, right? The last barrier was paying college athletes.
I know. It's like I know we got sports gambling and paying college athletes in like 2 years' time. It's like this is great.
What's happening? The world's deteriorating. Next,
you couldn't even buy Nate a New Glarus beer when he played for the Badgers.
You couldn't. No spotted cow. No spotted cow.
No spotted cow.
I need So Eric, let's get into the storytelling segment of the podcaster.
Yeah.
I know you've been waiting.
Was Nate and I DM before about, growing up in Minnesota. His dad was the coach. Mike Tice was the coach when I was in high school. But I remember, like, we talk about the Moss days fondly as if the Vikings were like always good. But there was a season, I think 2001, Denny Green was the coach. There was the year that Corey Stringer died in training camp. And then they went like 5-10. Dennis Green, who was always like, Dennis Green had like every single year was a winning year, but he had alienated ownership so badly that the first time they were bad, they fired him right away. And your dad, who like how many offensive line coaches get promoted to head coach over coordinators? I feel like that was like a very rare occurrence.
I mean, it was like him and like Art Shell.
Art Shell, that's right.
Yeah, that's probably about. I mean, really, that's it. Wow. I mean, there's my wife.
So
then also I'm just trying to think who else. Like that's it. Callahan. But he was an OC before.
Yeah. And so I'm watching. So I watch random games on YouTube. I think they're hilarious. But I remember week 17 of 2001, which was supposed to be week 2 of 2001, but was moved to week 17 because of 9/11, canceled an entire week. So it was this weird. It was the Vikings Ravens. The Ravens were coached by Brian Billick, who also coached your dad when he was at Minnesota. And the Vikings were, Dante was injured.
Yep.
Todd Bauman, who played in the same conference in college as I did, St. Cloud State, injured. So the Vikings were starting something called Spurgeon Win during your dad's first game.
Yeah.
And the first pass play of the game was a reverse to Randy Moss, who threw like an alley-oop to Chris Carter. That was how like little faith they had. But the Ravens were so bad. This was the Elvis Gerback year.
Yep.
And the Ravens needed to make the playoffs, needed a win to make the playoffs. But Elvis Gerback was so bad that the Ravens, who, this is important, were 10-point favorites, were up 12-3 with probably like a minute or two left. And Al Michaels he's got something on the Ravens side. You know this.
Yeah.
And so the poor Spurgeon Win has like a 3rd and 10, drops back to pass, gets strip sacked. Jamie Sharper picks up the fumble, runs it in, and Al hit the change in inflection in his voice when he says, and this is an important touchdown for I think Miami needed the Baltimore to lose. And he goes, this is a very important touchdown for Miami and an extremely important touchdown for a lot of people in a 19-3 random game. Quarterback by Spurgeon Win, coached by your dad. I'd never realized until we had worked with Al with NBC. Like, I had no idea how big of a degenerate he was. And in that game, watching it back 20 years ago, it was like the clearest I've ever seen it happen in hindsight.
Isn't one of those things where you just don't realize the references? It's like me watching The Simpsons when I was a kid. And then it's like, oh yeah, I love it. I get that movie reference. I get that one. And now watching, I'm like, I didn't get 80% of the jokes. Like, I didn't get anything, but that's the same thing. Al Michaels. Of course, it's Al Michaels. And Musburger was the same way too. He was going like, oh, my friends in the desert aren't happy about that one.
The difference was Musburger would also comment on like the wives and girlfriends of players.
That's also, he did do that.
And Al's like a little, like, has figured it out. He's like got a little more
like a little more class to it.
Yeah.
to wagering. No, I remember that game because it was either a Sunday or Monday night game, so that makes sense. And it was a total nothing game for the Vikings. And I remember they just made a huge deal about Chris Hovan reading Elvis Gerback's hands when he took a snap.
Yeah, that's right. Yep, they talked about that in that game. Yeah,
because Gerback had like he honestly like 3 or 4 like botched snaps in that game, and it was like NFL quarterback, which you see once a year maybe, and it's like he had like 3 in one game, and it was like they're like saying like how Hovan had a tell on it, so they just kept showing Gerback's hands like the entire game, and that's what I vividly remember for that one. Oh man,
that game was so bad that I feel like if I could have, like, the controller was just too far away and I was working on something. So I just kept letting it happen to me.
Yeah.
And then it got to the end and I'm like, holy shit, there was a chunk of gold at the end of this game. And Al Michaels.
Great gambling reference. That's awesome. I love watching those old games, especially listening to old Madden rants. And I tweeted a couple of those, but man, there were some that I was just like, I wish this was around now, because this is like, you guys did not appreciate this. like people of 20 years older than me. It's like, man, this is every Sunday. You guys got this? Because I would watch game after game and I'm like, all right, who's on commentary for this? Oh, Madden. All right, great. Maybe I'll hear something funny. It's like every minute there's something funny. It's like, I couldn't post enough. Like, I was like, I wish everybody would just watch those games just to listen to this guy. But no, that 0-1 game, yeah, that was a little bittersweet, because it's just, the internship, like, okay, this is great. And let's go out. And I think he gave a great speech. That's my cat Midge. Sorry. I think he gave a great speech for it. I think he wore a leather jacket for that game too. Like a classy motorcycle jacket, maybe.
Your dad had probably the best, like one of the best, because he was actually very good with the media. Like he was very funny and stuff. Mm-hmm. Somebody asked him why he wore black, and he said, well, if I wore purple, I'm 6'8". If I wear purple, I look like Barney. That was
self-awareness.
Was probably one of the best.
He was self-aware to a fault, almost.
Yeah.
he had the one where he talked about, someone asked him straight up. And this is what I thought was normal. I thought every head coach talked this way. So like talked how my dad did. So, which is probably why I'm in media now. Yeah. But it's like, he was talking about, he lost a bunch of weight. He lost like 30 pounds, which was like his summer tradition. He would lose 20 to 30 pounds, gain it all back during the season. But one of the reporters, it might've been Kevin Seifert, someone was just like, hey, so what was your trick? Like, what'd you do? And he goes, well, my wife, Diane, makes a lot of like, makes these great meatballs. But the thing is, I eat until I'm sick. And my diet was, I just stopped eating until I was sick. And he said that in like a national press conference. And it's just like, and at the time, my mom was, busting my dad's balls. Like, you had to say that. Like, why are you doing that to yourself? He's like, it's funny. It's funny. And then looking back, I'm like, oh my God, Dad, what are you doing, man?
I legitimately have that. I can commiserate with that. Like, there are certain foods that I just eat till I'm sick. And the only limiting factor is like when it runs out.
Yep. That's exactly how it's the popcorn test with like psychology. Yes. It's like, no matter how big it is, people still eat it. Yeah. I'm kind of like that with every food though. Like, I knew it got bad when people started asking me when I lived in Atlanta, when it used to be, oh, did you play quarterback? Oh, did you play receiver? Did you play tight end? Like, okay, I got that. Yeah. And then when I was in Atlanta and I gained about 40 pounds at that time, all of a sudden people go, did you play tackle? Were you a left tackle? And that's, I was like, all right, time to go on a diet. We're doing cardio every day for the next 2 years, man. There's no way. But that's when I knew I had to hit a diet, was when people started going, were you left tackle or guard? I was like, oh, no, I was a quarterback.
Oh man, that is incredible. I want, last question I have for you is, when in backing up Russ Wilson, did you know he was going to be the corniest quarterback in the NFL?
When he came into Wisconsin, so we had some good like freshman rituals. We didn't haze at Wisconsin, but it was more like, hey, freshman, you have to keep your shirt tucked in. Like, hey, freshman, you can't sit on the couches in the locker room. Freshman, you can't walk on the W. Just bogus rules, No one really, like, we didn't do much. But Russ came in and he had his shirt tucked in. And like when we were working out, like he always had his shirt tucked in. And we're like, hey, dude, you're not a freshman, you're a transfer. And he was like, no, this is what I do. And I was just kind of, and Russ is great. Like, he has his persona, but like Russ is funny. Like Russ can actually be very funny. And I was just kind of like, okay, all right, that's just kind of what he does. And sure enough, that's what he did. He had his shirt tucked in with everything. And then I was like, okay, that's fine. And then I saw him dance one time. And then I was like, oh man, you're cornier than I am. And I'm a white dude from Minnesota. Like, but it was like that. I first I thought you were going to ask, when did you know he was going to be the starter? And I was going to say 2 plays, when I was like, it was 7-on-7. I could tell you it was 7-on-7. He scrambled out of the pocket. He did like a live drill in 7-on-7, which I've never seen anyone do, but he wanted guys to practice the scramble drill. And he threw one about 45 yards to a corner, like perfect, like corner out to Jared Aberderis. And I remember just being like, okay, he's got it. Yep, he's got it. Yeah, I'm good. Signals. I got the signals. I'm good. Yeah, but that's basically what it was. But Cornelius wise, it was shirt tucked in day one.
If I asked, when you knew he was going to be a starter, I wouldn't have gotten the corny.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
I got 2 for 1 special. It only continues to amaze me. We close out every single podcast with this, which is a recommendation from our guest. I'm really excited to hear yours because you've dropped a massive amount of knowledge already. It's been an awesome conversation. Give us a recommendation.
Recommendation for anything?
It can be anything. Like I give restaurants, we give podcasts. It doesn't matter.
$500 colognes.
A question I get, because I'm a big board game guy, is kind of what, especially when pandemic hit and people were like with their significant others and they needed something to do. A game that's fun with 2 people, 3 people, 4 people, 5 people. And this is one of my favorite games, and it's a game called Carcassonne. And I can't recommend this game enough. It's an older game. In the board game world, there's kind of like 3 or 4 games that are considered like the new classics, like the new monopolies of the world. And that's Catan, which everyone's heard of. The other one's Ticket to Ride, which is like a train game, which I also recommend, especially for families. It's a great game. And another newer one, another one's called actually called Pandemic, which is a co-op game. And this last one's called Carcassonne. And it's kind of a unique game. You put tiles down and you only get 1 tile at a time. You get these things called meeples and you get a certain amount, and that's how you get points based on that. It's actually a very simple game to learn. It's just a little unique how the mechanics are, but then once you get it, it's like pretty easy. And there's like there's a bunch of expansions for it, but there's a couple and it's a cheap game too, which I like. And it's portable. It kind of does everything. It's great with 2 people. It can be very cutthroat. You can have fun with it. You can make it friendly. Yeah. And it's like,
how do you spell that?
Carcassonne, I think. Okay. My sister was the English major.
I'm just gonna start typing CAR and then like random letters.
Carcassonne. But I can't recommend that game enough. There's an app for it that's great, and then there's also there's a couple simple expansions for them called Traders. I think it's Traders and Builders, and there's another one. But there's 2 of them that make the game even more complete. And like I just can't emphasize enough. It's simple but deep, which I always love. Like just a game that takes 5 minutes to learn, but then you just keep playing it, and more strategies kind of unlock as you play it more and more. And you're like, oh, I can do that. And you're like, yeah, you can get a little tricky with that. Yeah. So Carcassonne, highly recommend it. One of my favorite games, and 2 thumbs up.
This podcast also 2 thumbs up, Nate. We really appreciate it. You battled through internet issues. You were super generous with your time. We've been meaning to do this for a while. We will not have as long a hiatus between this one and the next one as we did to get you on here. You can go check out Nate and all his great work, obviously on Twitter at @Nate_Tice and at The Athletic with The Athletic Football Show. Cannot recommend that enough. Nate, thank you, brother.
Thanks for having me, guys.
All right. Special thank you to Nate Tice for being so generous with his time. He battled through multiple internet breakups and still we had an awesome conversation. So you should go check out Nate if you have not already at @Nate_Tice. Go listen to his podcast, The Athletic Football Podcast, if you don't already. He creates great content both for free and on The Athletic as part of their subscription package. So go check him out. Thank you to him. We'll be back on Wednesday with more. Thank you guys for hanging out. Love you. Peace.